The other day I wanted to buy some wood planks to build a deck. So I went to a timber merchant, I gave them my budget, and I asked them to deliver to me whatever they could do for the money I had. 2 months later, they delivered this.
Well, apparently timber prices have risen to unprecedented levels in the last year. I am a wood scientist, and one of the sentences I probably read most is, "Wood is cheap and plentiful. So how come I cannot afford it?" Well, we are not the ones to control the prices. That's the Russians. And the Europeans. You see, the UK imports most of its structural timber from them. Why don't you sell me some nice UK timber then? I don't have any. I guess some important building projects bought it all? Nope, they burned it. They what? Yeah, they burned it for biomass energy production. Of course, not all of it, but more than 80% of homegrown hardwood timber. And half of the softwood timber is used for energy, chipped for panel products, pulped, or used in packaging and fencing. But why? Homegrown timber is not very well liked. People think that it's low quality compared to European timber. But the local timber has been used in buildings for hundreds of years. Clearly someone thought it was good enough. But back then people used to use it without thinking much about it. Nowadays you need to actually know that the timber you are using in construction is strong enough for the job. Unfortunately, we don't know much about homegrown timber. You are telling me that we can build spaceports in Scotland, but we don't know whether our wood is strong enough to build houses? Can't we do some research? Yeah, well, it's not that easy. Wood is a natural material, and its properties can vary a lot between trees, but even within a tree. And the properties also depend on forestry practices, on soil and climate conditions, and so on. The properties we need to know for structural design are strength, as in how much weight can we put on it before it breaks, density, as in how much room does it take per weight, and stiffness, as in how much does it bend under load. Great, so we just measure these properties? We kinda have to break the timber to measure them. Strength and stiffness at least can only be measured destructively, so you cannot measure them on timber that you still intend to use.
So how are we using timber in construction at all? Clearly there is a way to find out about these properties. People are using wood to build houses.
We sure can. We have to estimate the wood properties.
Estimate? Isn't that just a fancy word for guessing? You guess.
Yeah, we guess. Sort of. But we gather clues to make a well-informed guess, and we call that grading. Our clues are indicating properties that are related to strength, stiffness, and density. It's kinda like choosing a watermelon in the supermarket. You might look at it to decide if it's sweet. In wood, we look at features like knots, for example. Or you can take your watermelon and knock on it to decide if it's sweet by the sound. In wood, we use roughly the same technique to measure acoustic velocity. But most people don't really know what they are doing when they are knocking on their watermelon. But of course, we need to know how the indicating properties relate to the characteristic properties that we actually want to know. We need data from destructive and non-destructive testing to establish these relationships. And because wood properties vary so much, we need lots and lots of data. For some species, we would probably need to test all the wood we have. But someone did the work for the most common species and broke a lot of timber. We can grade conifers like Sitka spruce, and they are mostly graded to the strength class C16. Well, that's great news. So we do use this timber in construction. No, not a lot, no. Often architects and designers still perceive it as inferior and prefer to use higher strength classes like C24 and they mostly come from Europe.
That actually sounds like the safe thing to do. You are only guessing the wood properties after all.
Yes and no. The estimates we are making are mostly conservative anyway. And then there are additional safety factors used in the design. There is really no need to build in this extra safety layer. I don't know. It can't hurt, can it? Wood is cheap and plentiful. Wait, they're wasting all the wood I could use for my deck. Exactly. We actually do need to use our homegrown timber efficiently. Because guess what? The wood that we are burning for energy is probably good enough to be used for pretty much anything. We just need to do some research on wood properties and new grading strategies, especially for hardwoods. And we need to learn to value our homegrown timbers. Even for renewable materials like timber, we need to reduce, reuse, recycle. Wood waste can often be reused, even in structures if we manage to invent some grading procedures. And most of the wood that is demolition or construction waste, or even household waste, is probably still good enough to at least serve as fencing or packaging. I guess I could also build my deck from recovered timber. It might not look perfect in the end, but to be honest, whenever I start crafting things, they end up looking good enough, I guess.